you have any apologies?
So we've got Lisa Schroll, Rachel Ashworth, Catherine Farrell, David McKenna and Anne-Marie Evans.
Okay, moving on to item 2, declarations of interest. Any declarations other than those already issued to the monitoring officer notified of? No. Chairperson's announcements. I have one item on the announcements. On information given that item 6.3 is not being considered at today's meeting. Moving on then to the minutes. I'll take accuracy as we go through them and then matters arising on the update of the outstanding actions. So first one, Board of Commissioners for South Wales held on 27th of March. Anything in terms of accuracy on pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 12, 13, 14. No? Any items of accuracy on item 4B, the Finance and Audit Committee on 20th of March? Your pack, well, not the pack of the minute pages 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, 9 and 10, 11 and 12. Next meeting, People Committee held 19th of March, anything on pages 1 and 2, 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8. Item 4G, Strategic Change Committee of 27th February, pages 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8 and 9. And then item 4 is the Local Pensions Board on 20th February, pages 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and 5. Okay, moving on to the update on our planned action. So, bands being populated, some general comments will be when we get to the like certain things require some dates. So, first on the CRMP consultation pack talks about working with British Chef Commissioners. That's on the agenda this afternoon.
It is, yeah.
So that we covered on that. The update paper for the fatigue that is coming to the July meeting. The strategic improvement plan. This talks about a lot of work. We've got a date for that. Is that coming?
So we don't have a. We can get a date, Commissioner. We're working on it at the moment. It's around aligning everything so transformation's all in one place and live up with the Step Forward programme essentially. So we're going to talk about it today, but we can put a date in place.
This actually relates to the stakeholder mapping and the communications piece. So I think this is more linked to the CRMP consultation.
Okay.
I think that's the point I wanted to make there. Is it's kind of like related to 9.1 above, isn't it, really? So we need to kind of like roll that into the 9.1 action. And then I think from my perspective, if we could just see the plan for the consultation and then those two things can be closed.
Yes.
I'm kind of aware that we got a growing action log, which is never a great thing. So I think, we can probably once we've got sight of what the plan is and consultation, those two can come off then.
Okay. The next one that's contained within this board meeting.
Yeah. So that can come off as well then.
Yeah, as is the next one, the statutory performance indicators. The alignment one, second part 27.3823.
Yeah, so we're gonna discuss that in the meeting today. The reason we brought them separately is because they're the Welsh Government indicators. So as we go through this year, ready for next year, we can morph them into the wider performance management framework. But because we're not there in terms of the CRMP yet, we're setting those statutory indicators. For this year, we've kept them alongside, but they will find their way into the overall performance management.
There's a paper on the indicators anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. The next one, how that continues.
Yeah, a quick one on that. So that's with Steve Pomeroy and also Mike Connolly. I will probably have a meeting on the 8th of June with Mike's replacement, Matt, and I will bring this up then, just to make sure that it's got some oversight. That's finished.
I mean, Carl and I had a brief chat about this before, and I've got a lot of sympathy for the difficulty with this one, because there are three main mechanisms of dealing with road traffic codes: engineering, enforcement, and education. We only have a partial input into the education. We have no impact on enforcement with the engineering. So it's very difficult being judged on performance indicators like RTC when we've got so little that we can, well, not that education isn't big, but it's not the whole picture. And Kirsty, does your hand?
Yes, I just think, so the chief's given an indication of his intention to raise it again with the new partners in Welsh Government. I just wonder, again, I just think it's a good practice to kind of keep the action log as tight as we can. I'm just wondering whether that just comes off and that is reported back either in the chief's update or in a committee or in a suitable committee that's looking at performance indicators, rather than keeping it here, because the chief will have done what we asked him to do.
Yeah.
So the action is speak to Welsh Government. That's being done. What Welsh Government choose to do with that is a matter for them. So I think we can probably take it.
Yeah.
And actually, out of everything we're dealing with, that's actually a pretty small issue.
Yeah, so I think
Important, but
so the chief's actually done what was asked of him. He's raised it with Welsh Government, then I think that tool can also come off. Otherwise, we get just bogged down, as I said, in the minutiae, rather than trying to keep us in the strategic.
Yeah.
Speaking of the next one, the strategic equality plan, it's in the update from Matthew, but it doesn't say when. It just says it's ongoing.
Yeah, so the plan is done and he's engaging stakeholders now. We need to put a date in there to
Yeah,
come
when
back.
it's
So,
completed and it's
yeah,
okay.
I'll work with Amanda on that.
Gender pay gap. That's
That's also done, and there was a piece of work around on-call pay.
it's going to be completed by the end of June, so that's not this meeting.
So the question again there is like, where does that go? Does that stay at a board level, or actually does that go back to the people committee, and then the people committee can escalate if need be? I think again,
So we signed off the gender pay gap report. We were happy with that one. So this is one element I would suggest to go back to people committees, just for oversight.
Next one, top strategic risks. Amanda, Liam.
So, yeah, I think part of this was around aligning the dates of the risk meetings with the Board of Commissioners meetings. There's still some uncertainty about the exact dates of Board of Commissioners meetings going forward for the next year. So once those have been confirmed, we'll align the risk meetings to ensure that's action done.
Basically, the issue last time was that the reporting you got was very old because it was out of sync.
Yeah.
So actually what we're going to do is I've asked Mia to make sure that we've changed our strategic risk assurance forum meeting quarterly. So it's 2 weeks before a Board of Commissioners or a Finance and Audit meeting.
Yeah.
So that we get the meeting, the update, the mitigations that we're doing, the renewal, the scores for the rest. Then we can put that in your papers, get it published a week before the meeting and consider it Finance and Audit. What was happening is that was out of sync before. So.
Okay.
Too much in retrospect and talking about data that wasn't relevant.
Yeah, it was like 3 months before. So we need to get away from that terminology. So it's no longer a backward looking, but it's as at today's date, what are we doing about risk?
Yeah.
Because we don't care what happened 3 months ago because the risk didn't happen 3 months ago. It's what we're doing going forwards.
Right. So the next two bullet points are completed.
Yeah.
So the useful in terms of the needs to put forward, the word complete, it's usually you see completed in bold, so you don't even need to go to it to discuss it. Okay. Right, going then with section 6 of the agenda reports of decision 6.1, the indicative audit strategy. Liam?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll kick us off and then Steve may want to come in as well. So the first thing to say is this ordinarily would go to the Finance and Audit Committee, because given that the one isn't due to sit for another couple of months, it's brought to Commissioners just so as Steve and his team can get on with the delivery of the plan for the year. So the report sets out the indicative audit strategy for the next 3 years. but what is asking commissioners to do is to agree the audit plan for the next financial year, 26-27. That's set out in the appendix. Steam takes a risk-based approach to how he sets out his audit plan, and it looks to cover key control areas around governance, risk, ICT, finance, and workforce, as well as estates and fleet as well. So there's a good range of areas covered within the plan. It's one that I would recommend to commissioners. I'm comfortable with it. There is one omission that I wanted to flag on the TIA report, which is around absence management. It's not captured in Appendix A, but to give assurance to commissioners, it is captured in the operational plan. It's just an omission. So you can see in Appendix B then that it is included. I've had a discussion with Steen. It's down for Q2 in the plan, but I've had a recent discussion with Steen that given the levels of absence that we're seeing across the service at the moment, that will be brought forward. So that's been brought forward into Q1 and it's due to be delivered in the next couple of weeks. You'll see at Appendix C as well, there are some areas that haven't been included in the 3-year rolling strategic plan. I've discussed with Steen as well that there is some flexibility in the number of days that we can allocate this year. So if there is anything that the commissioners feel needs to be added to the plan, then there is the scope to be able to do that. So yeah, I'll pause there and open to commissioners. I can see.
Thank you very much, Liam. Really appreciate it. Given what you've just said about there is some flexibility and potentially there are some days that could be allocated to further work, I wonder whether we could agree moving home fire safety from Appendix C actually into the main programme. We know that this is, a potential area where we've seen quite high numbers of fatalities in dwellings, and I just wonder whether it would be timely to have an audit of our home fire safety work, if there was capacity, which you seem to indicate there is, if we could move that up, please.
Agreed.
Yeah, it'd be good to see that there's a correlation between, we've had a number of fatalities where they weren't on our radar, so it's useful to know whether we're targeting the right groups, particularly with the audit wells and HMI reports.
And particularly with TIA's links with our local authorities, because they are, they provide a lot of audit for them. There would be some triangulation surely that they could bring into that home safety area.
I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. I've discussed with Steen and there's some flexibility there, but comfortable from my point of view. Steen, anything you want to add on that or any other aspect?
No, I'm sorry. No, I think you covered everything I was going to cover, Liam. Yeah, just to emphasise, the plan is dynamic. It'll change throughout the year according to priorities, and I think home fire safety is an example of that. We'll have at some point in the next couple of weeks, we'll have a scoping meeting to talk about what we will cover as part of that, and we can include that as we can kind of redraft this document, if you like, and represent that to the service with that included. But until we've had that scoping meeting at the moment, we need to kind of identify what it is that's going to cover and the number of days and those types of things. But yeah, we've certainly got capacity to do that, and certainly we've got capacity if there's any other kind of things come up during the year, we'll be able to support you in that respect as well.
Okay, great. Carl.
Just two kind of overarching questions really, both for the service and you, Steen, really. It's a comprehensive set of inspections, which is really, really useful. Can the service cope with that amount of work? And actually, is it achievable? And are we happy that we're hitting the highest levels of risk? I think I know the answer on all, but I just wanted to make sure that before we commit to it, that we're really comfortable that actually the breadth that we've got, and we know the organisation's creaked at times with the amount of inspection, etc. Can the service cope with it as well as in the body, really?
So I'm happy to come in on that first point, and then from the risk point of view, I'd look to Steen. But short answer, Commissioner, is yes. They're scheduled in across the year, and audit leads have been made aware of the times when the individual reviews are taking place. And it's needed. I appreciate there's lots going on. When there's lots going on, having assurance around your control environment is more important than ever, I would say. So this is the work that is needed to allow Steen and his team to give an audit opinion as well. So yeah, I think we can cope with it, and I think it's absolutely needed at this level as well.
Oh, Steve?
Yeah, in terms of the risk points, so Liam alluded to it in his introduction, really. So we believe it's covering your key risks. Obviously, you can't look at everything in 1 year, so that's why there's a kind of 3-year strategy. The document itself as well, we kind of, that Appendix C is our attempt at showing you the audit universe, all of the other things that, but we know our risks or concerns, but at the present time, perhaps not priorities for internal audit to provide you with that support.
Just got one brief question on it. In terms of, Stina, in terms of how you identify the risks facing, do you look at the sector and identify any issues that have risen across the sector, and then they are fed in as specifics for us?
Yes, yeah, that's very much this kind of top down, bottom up, if you like. So we've got a sector lead for emergency services. So she's actually in between, but we've had when this was done, we had a sector lead. So they kind of horizon scan for issues within the fire services, within the generally within the emergency services, and we meet regularly internally to talk about those things. And obviously my team and Jonathan in particular, the audit manager, are alive to all of that as well. So that brings the kind of the big picture audit universe, if you like, in the sectors information, but also then we're looking at your own risk register, your strategic plan, your business plans, any previous internal audit coverage, to give you that, again, that audit universe to make sure that we've thought about everything and then prioritise what we need to accordingly.
Okay, great. Any other comments on this paper? Jake, sorry.
No, go on.
Lady, I've got a general.
Okay, well, it was just in terms of liaison, I just thought of Audit Wales scheme and you know, how much liaison or horizon screening or whatever's going on there with you and Audit Wales.
Yeah, so we're mindful of what they say in terms of their when they do the financial accounts, they come to us before they start that process to take our views, and I think I've had a lot of them in the last couple of weeks. I think I've responded to them for South Wales Fire. Anything as we undertake our audits that we think we need a kind of view from them on, so financial audits in particular, for not for yourselves, but example recently around leases. So we've had a query around leases, so we've gone to them for their views on what they think our finding says and what the recommendation would be. But that's from other clients where it's kind of a flexible two-way relationship, but we kind of only meet at points when we need to, I think.
Okay, that's good, thank you.
Yeah, my point is, first of all, a big thank you to Steve for preparing the paper, and then also an extension of my support to you, Steve, for what you do, because this allows us to capture things before they become an issue. It allows us to get ahead of things before they become an issue, and I would rather you identify something so that we can put it right within the organisation, rather than that being captured by an external audit that has to pick it up, because I think we should be controlling ourselves, and that's where I'd like to get to, that we identify all of the issues that we possibly can within the organisation, and then more importantly, that if we miss it and they miss it, and then something actually happens, I would like to make sure that we're really doing this without fear or favour, and you have my absolute support to go wherever you want. If you get any pushback, and please come straight to me, and I will assist you and give you my support to make sure we're really doing good auditing right the way across the service. And there are probably some areas that we might need to veer and haul on where we look, and your opinion on that is really valued. Thank you.
I played a very small part in some of this planning. I went to one of the early meetings, and I think also the point is to choose those topics where you know you might not get a good result.
Yes, that's right.
Because actually that's the benefit of the process, rather than only choosing topics you know you're okay with, because then you've got a public report which sounds good. So I think, so that we don't get kicked around later on, actually we know this is an area that needs focus, and therefore we're focusing it.
And there's an almost inextricable link as well between this and where we're looking, and the big risk meetings that we're doing now, which are identifying all sorts of areas that might not previously be looked at.
I think it's regarded as a mature organisation that can look at the areas where it knows it's green, rather than just the gloss in the areas where it knows it's strong. Okay, great. Thanks. Moving on then to 6.2, independent review of services analyst.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Morning, Commissioners. So this report invites commissioners to receive the report from CMC, who are the consultancy that we procured to undertake the independent review of people services, and to support the transition to a new structure, which is at Appendix 2 within the document, and in doing so, agree the appointment of a new, so this is an additional post at head of service level and at people services manager level. But it also seeks approval of the concept of a more blended model, resourcing model in the directorate, which is based on bringing operational, so grey book colleagues into the team alongside corporate colleagues. And that was a recommendation of Fenella Morris in her report, and has been something that we've been discussing internally as well. So those are the recommendations that I'm seeking approval of today. In terms of the background, just to give a little flavour of where we've been, the terms of reference for the project and the piece of work was commissioned and agreed by Finance and Audit Committee in November 2025. CMC were appointed through the Crown Commercial Framework, and they started their work on the 26th of January this year. In April, they submitted their report, which is attached at Appendix 1. What you will see in the report is they have 3 areas of concern. The first is around structure, second is around process and governance, and the third is around workload. The executive team has discussed CMC's report, and we've had a few meetings to discuss the content and the headlines, and we've talked quite a lot about the structure, so the recommendation around the structure in particular. We also have 4 days still in the bank with CMC for them to come in and do some process cataloguing and work with us. So I think combined with the move to a new structure and the process work, we will see a shift in the service delivery of the directorate. In terms of the new structure, the illustration as Appendix 2 is an illustration of where we'd like to be. But as I say, the recommendation today is to move forward with the recruitment of 2 posts and start to transition some ops colleagues or ops roles into that function. In terms of cost, finance colleagues have been involved in the costings, and you will see that there's a budget of £78,581, which we will reallocate from the Leadership Academy into funding the permanent roles. In terms of the recommendations, if commissioners approve these, I recognise there's a lot of work to do from here on in. We are ready to go with a job advert should we obtain approval today for the first role, and I've engaged the PMO and our comms team in terms of the running this as a project and making sure we've got regular lines to our stakeholders and our staff in the directorate who have already been briefed ahead of today's meeting. So that's as much as I want to say in terms of an introduction. I don't know if there's any comment or observation from colleagues. We had some rich discussions around the structure and the model, and in particular the blended model that we're proposing, but happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks. I've got to say at the end. Carl?
As I always deem to, I seem to always have 3 questions. So the affordability, obviously you've got to talk about the key employers, but the grey book posts are that there is a cost there, isn't there? And because I'm presuming we're reallocating them from other roles into the department.
So we would lift and shift. So there's no backfill. It's a manoeuvre of existing roles.
And I get that, but there is a cost. So because we are putting extra resource in there, although it's coming from other. So it's just about that visibility, really, of the additional cost of the 878,000 is very, very clear, but there is additional cost coming in from other work coming in, and recognising that at some point I think is really important. Even if it's just lift and shift, we are putting extra stuff in there, which is there is an extra cost. Am I making myself clear, or is it just lots of nonsense? It's just a kind of that demonstration of the totality of the cost and the totality of the additionality we're putting in there, even if it's just internally reallocated, really.
Yes.
I just think it's kind of helpful to kind of recognise that.
Do you mean the investment into
The cost?
Yeah. Because
Cost
when the cost bubble
envelope
to the
for
organisation doesn't change, does it? But the
Yeah.
cost bubble for people's
People say,
service.
yeah,
does.
that makes sense.
So I just think kind of recognise it. It's not a deal, but I just think recognising it, that's the additional. So that was the kind of bit around affordability really. The other two bits is that I kind of picked up a little bit, but the role of digital going forward. I think we've all recognised that digital enablement within the functioning sphere, but I wasn't quite seeing much of that in CMC. I know that goes into DDAT to a degree, there's a crossover there, but I don't know if you wouldn't mind talking about that to a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the last one is how do we assess progress? How do we know in 12 months what the difference is going to be made? Because, you know, DDAT's a good example, isn't it? If we are going to kind of bring in a new system in there, that probably won't start paying out maybe for 12, 18 months, but we should be able to set those kind of steps on the way. So how do you think you should be, and how should we be assessing progress in the function?
Right, so digital, I have alluded in the report that we think that there will be efficiencies out of our digital solution that we deploy into HR. That is a burning platform for us. Our contract for core ends towards the end of this year. We're likely to extend for a year to give us the window to procure a new system. What that will do, it will see us move from paper calculations into a slicker system that does everything for us and is more based around self-service. So our customers, our firefighters, should be able to access more information through that provision. So I think there's massive efficiencies to be gained in that area, which is why CMC is saying don't throw more people at the problem, get your processes and your digital solutions right, and then you will see the efficiencies to use those in more added value areas if you need to. So that's the one bit. In terms of progress, so we've started measuring, so we've got a suite of KPIs within the Directorate at the moment where we're measuring time to deliver services to our customers. So they're part of our sort of local metrics. I think there's also, for me, and we've never done it, and perhaps now is the time to do it, is survey our customers. We've never gone out. I think probably there's been previously a concern that the feedback wouldn't be positive, but I think it's the right thing to do. So maybe consideration for us at this point, do we go out now and then so we get a baseline for next year?
Yeah.
And I think generally, I mean, you know, the reputation of the Directorate is probably at an all-time low out there. So I think, you know, just anecdotal feedback. So improvements in customer service delivery, checking in with our customers through a survey in terms of where we are, faster delivery of services through digital, more self-service to our customers. I think there's also a programme alongside this of upskill. Adam and I were talking yesterday about you know, we need to put more investment into the team in terms of, you know, preparing for things like employment tribunals, upskilling CPD, you know, our professionalism, bringing CPD in so that, you know, our people are skilled in delivering real good quality HR services.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Rich. Thank you very much, Alison. Very comprehensive report. I'd just like to pick up on the immediate concerns and in the three areas. Point 2, process and governance breakdown, and then first bullet point, risk of legal compliance issues. I'm not clear in the document where we're actually focusing on that, because that, I think, you know, that is a risk area for us. And to cut a long story short, you need to employ another solicitor with expertise in employment matters, because, you know, that's been a stumbling block for the department, because there's some very clever employment lawyers out there who turn things around on a sixpence, you know?
Yes. So just to give you some assurance, our new head of the Professional Standards Unit has been employed. She's got a law degree and a law background and has worked in legal firms. So she's already bringing some, we're seeing some green shoots in terms of decisions and advice that we're getting on the employment matters, so the discipline cases particularly. This week we held a new board, which is called our Professional Standards Board, and we're bringing Hugh James into that board And that we're getting legally privileged advice, obviously, in that arena around some of our issues and some of our cases. So we've got a sort of multi-pronged approach at the moment. In terms of should we employ another lawyer, I would say we've got the basis that we need covered for now, but it's definitely one to watch.
Okay, so
yes.
let's keep it on the agenda
Yes.
then. Yeah, because, you know, if we keep losing cases on a legal technicality, you know, when all that work has been done, it just seems crazy
Yes.
that we're not looking at those technicalities. Thank you.
I've just got a couple of observations. I think about the cost, in a way, it's quite a good thing, because we have asked for the organisation to fund the changes and the additions it wants to make internally without external growth. So if the overall cost envelope of the organisation is going and you're moving around resource, that's good. And it sets a good example for other departments
Yes.
that anything that they want to do needs to be carved out from sort of areas which are less efficient in the business. So that's good to see that. The other thing about tech, I mean, I was talking with Kirsty first thing this morning about, you get the things about not just efficiency but effectiveness. So in the NHS Trust I work, they're using AI now as part of the return to work interviews. So what it does is it looks at the specific thing that the person has gone with, and it generates a targeted return to work interview relevant to the particular thing people have gone off with. So it's not a general return to work interview.
Yeah.
So you get hundreds and hundreds of different targeted interviews, and you can build up a database about the health and well-being of the organisation, and you get an effectiveness as well. And there is a drawdown self-service part of it. So if people are feeling unwell or want to know knowledge about something, they can draw it down, and it gives them a whole list of things. So people can manage a lot of it themselves. And it was an organisational effectiveness rather than just an efficiency.
Thank you.
So yeah, 9,300 return to work interviews and lots of different data done in this particular trust, which indicates there's a lot of sickness as well. Anyone else got any comments, observations on the legal paper?
No, I think my question has been asked about. It's like this what question, isn't it? As a result of running this programme, what difference, what will our service say about our HR function? And I think that's the core really, but that seems to be covered in the metrics. What will our people say about this function at the end of this project?
And also we want interim progress reports of the People Committee showing the trajectory.
Yes. Yeah.
Can I make one point, Chair, please? Just on the affordability that we talked about moving from one area. So I think absolutely we can bring that information. What I wanted to clarify is we're not stopping and taking away capacity from operational issues. This is where they perform in similar functions. So an example is recruitment of retain, for example. So by moving them into people's services, there's economies of scale, there's consistency of approach without taking away from that operational capacity. So just wanted to make that clear, that's all.
Yeah, makes sense.
And if I could add to that, if you have a team, there's a cost of time and energy and leadership that is required to run that team. By bringing the people into various things, then you start to reduce that overhead actually. So there will still be stuff going on. So Carl, you talked about a bubble, but it's not. We've taken something from over there and we're not doing that anymore, exactly as Liam says. So it's not a completely new investment. So it's partial, but it's really important.
Okay, great, thank you. 6 report, so we move on to section 7, reports from information assurance. First one is item 7.1, transformation programme update.
Chair, can I just clarify? So it was put in that part of the agenda because it was likely to be just an update. When you look at the recommendations, there is an agreement sought on one of the subsections. So it is actually a partial decision paper in that respect. So I just thought I ought to draw that to your attention.
2.3, review and approve.
Yes, and I believe ACFO Martin Walker is going to present.
Good morning, Commissioners. So Commissioners obviously be aware of the regular updates provided to them around the 82 recommendations that came out of the independent cultural review conducted in 2024, and that these up to now have been managed through the Step Forward programme. However, the paper submitted for today's Board of Commissioners is slightly different in that it not only provides a current update from the programme, but it also is seeking to formally close down the Step Forward programme. Over the course of the Step Forward programme, we have made significant progress against the 82 recommendations, and the evaluation of recommendations under each area is contained within Appendix 1, where what we have said we're going to do is then followed up by what we have done and the evaluation of that. Now, there would be 8 recommendations that would remain open through to April 2027, with an additional 4 due to close imminently. These outstanding recommendations, along with updates and completion dates against these, are contained in Appendix 2. However, in summary, the 8 remaining recommendations are more long-term pieces of work that cannot be expedited to bring the timeframes forward. For instance, 3 can be related to performance metrics, which cannot be fully measured until the performance framework has time to embed itself following the development and its launch. But now that we have a performance framework, these recommendations will naturally become BAU. Also, the development of some metrics will resolve themselves once the work of DDAT and HR takes place around systems which are incorporated in the DDAT plan moving forward and could be monitored via this route. 5 of the 8 recommendations are linked to either policy reviews and or the delivery of training in relation to some of these policies. Now, these are all areas now that have the infrastructure behind the recommendation to be able to carry them through under business as usual. Now, it is recognised that there may be a concern that by closing the Step Forward programme now, that these 8 recommendations run the risk of falling off our radar and any actions required to complete these recommendations not followed through on. But to mitigate this, we'll simply move the oversight of these remaining recommendations from the current Step Forward programme into our newly formed internal governance structure under BAU. And this, we believe, will provide an appropriate level of scrutiny and ongoing reporting against the outstanding actions required between now and next April 2027. So by closing down the Step Forward programme and moving the remaining work into BAU, it will also allow us to free up capacity within the PMO to begin the next phase of the journey for South Wales Fire and Rescue Service, as we already have a number of significant transformational programmes we would like to start that in some cases will need to be overseen by the PMO. And that the shaping of these programmes has already begun, and that we've actually had a very productive strategy session earlier this week, where we were able to begin identifying those transformational programme requirements for South Wales moving forwards. But by restructuring where the recommendations sit, we'll also prevent duplication of work and monitoring of them, as some of the work streams that will monitor these recommendations may sit outside of the PMO, obviously under BAU. So the ask of Commissioners is to acknowledge the progress against the 82 recommendations and to agree to close down the Step Forward programme. Importantly, this doesn't mean that we're taking our foot off the gas with respect to our ambitions to be a transformational, progressive and outstanding service. It is instead a positive step that recognises the progress the service has made since the independent cultural review. So that's sort of an overview really of the ask. I'd like to invite any questions.
Yeah, Carl, you've been key to this from Commissioner's
And Kirsty with the 2.0. I think when you read what's in there, you realise the amount of work that's been gone on in the last 2.5 years. You know, you look at the progress, the deliverables, and you know we're not sometimes not so good sometimes in the organisation. I've been really clear about what we delivered. The reports in here are really clear about what have we actually delivered. And, you know, should be a pride in the organisation for actually how far this has gone in 2 years. I don't disagree at all with the 8 recommendations, and making sure that they go into and be continued, I think is really, really important. So I think really, really positive. I suppose one for the Chief really, and Adam, you know, so the Step Forward was the overarching transformation banner, wasn't it really? Now we know there's some probably more focused transformation work still to be done going forward. Is there a view that will be a step forward to, horrible language, or will there be something else, or are we going to go and look at it in a different light, different way, really going forward? Does that make sense?
It does. I don't know if I can answer, and then obviously Chief, you want to come in on the back of that. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really good question. Learning what we can from the Step Forward programmes, I think, is the really important part here. I absolutely agree. Lots has been done with that, but I think there's also a perception in the organisation, perhaps, that it's done by certain teams in certain areas, whereas actually transformation, what we're trying to do now is weave it into our strategy. We're trying to bring everything into one service strategy, which picks up transformation and monitors it through our programme management office as well. So we're not there yet. We're very much in the formative stages of bringing all that together. But I suppose to answer the question, I don't think we will see stepping up to in that kind of simplicity. I think what we're looking for now is strategic themes of the organisation, which are geared at transformation, and then having those, weaved into our performance framework, which we're already halfway to achieving anyway. How the CRMP knits into that, and bringing everything into one strategy, which is transformational in itself, basically, because we really want to kind of learn from what we can from the Stepping Up programme around not making it feel like it's just one section of the organisation, and then can you update us when that's done? It's like, no, it's broader than that now, because we're taking the next step. So hopefully that answers the question, but it's very much, that's the work in progress today, essentially.
So you can come back on that.
Yes, please. I'll add to that. Just this week, we've done a day and a half in which the whole of the SLT have been brought in to discuss with the ELT our strategy. And what we've done, we've got a pretty clear vision. We have got the strategic objectives nailed, and what we're doing is a refresh and an examination of the strategy that was developed last year, and an acceptance that we had shoehorned the transformation programme into that. We also had the SIP, which there are certain things that the Welsh Government require that didn't really align with where we think that we need to go. So what we've done is a load of work to make sure that that is completely aligned, that sits within the strategy. Cross-mapping all of this stuff that's in the transformation programme, so the Step Forward programme, making sure that's all in the strategy. That then becomes business as normal about your attempt to achieve that vision. So long-term vision, but then also we need to be absolutely eagle-eyed on what we're doing this year, what we're doing next year. So you've got a long-term strategy, but then what are you doing at these points to make sure that things are delivered? And something else that I'm really keen on is to make sure that people out on our stations and in our teams here and then in the other areas that we've got actually really feel this, because there's been an awful lot of work that we can go through there that is stuff that's up at our level, governance and things like that. What are you actually feeling on the ground? And that's a big focus of mine this year. And another one is empowerment. And the middle leaders are a key area that I really want to get empowered. And we've got we've changed the way we're doing middle leaders things. I think that's proving to be pretty successful. Yeah. And we've got a big middle leaders meeting at the end of June, which I think is going to be quite interesting.
Just sorry to come in on the Chief, but I think that's probably worth bringing some of that feedback from the Leadership Connect series that we're doing at the moment into this forum, actually, because we're making sure that we regular surveys, we get a lot of feedback from that, and the initial indicators are very good. So I think that's probably worth bringing back to this forum at some point, just to give you an update in terms of how we're engaging middle leaders.
Can I pick something up from the deck? I understand your reply about the integration of the Step Forward. I'm just quizzing a bit on, because I read the document and it says the Cornerstone project is the next step. So could you just explain how that fits, please?
So essentially how we'll track this. So the Cornerstone project will be the deliverables, I guess, of through the PMO. So some of the higher level elements, the digital transformation strategy, the CRMP elements, which we know are imminently going to be putting objectives together. They are what we will track through the PMO, but we're less inclined to kind of make that the Cornerstone project be an entity in itself that we sort of publish it up. We're much more aligned to a transformational strategy, I guess, that encompasses everything we do. Yeah. Owing to that we are going to have programs within that are high level and require that oversight
Okay.
because they're financial, they're reputational, they're strategic.
Yeah.
What we don't want to go down the road of is having everything through the PMO and making everything become tracked through a central team. The higher level projects will be, but very much business as usual for the department heads that we have in the service. We'll be delivering that strategy, which is the work that we're bringing together now. As the chief has said, we don't want transformation program and strategies on top of that.
That was my concern about duplication.
So I suppose to simplify, the cornerstone project would be the higher level elements tracked through the PMO, which are strategic, reputational and financial in nature.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you very much.
Right, thanks. And Kirsty, who is also with Carl, representing the interested commissioners.
Yeah, I just, first of all, just want to say thank you very much. And like Carl says, it is really good, isn't it, to see it all gathered together in one place. And perhaps inevitably in a process like this, we always will focus on the deficits, isn't it? Because the work is never done, and that's like a tendency, isn't it? So to have this all written out in this way is a really good reminder about progress. And I think that's a really important, thing to reflect on. And I absolutely agree with you in that what we're trying to achieve, I think, here is create a culture of innovation that isn't a separate project. Actually, we are a learning organisation who is constantly evolving and refining what we do in response to the risks and the needs of our community. And I think the danger, I think what this shows is actually a maturing of the organisation. So perhaps where we were previously, you did have to have a specific strategy that was being tracked outside of business as usual. But I think this is the right time for the organisation where they complete and stable leadership team now to move that into business as usual. But you're right, there will always be significant projects that will need the oversight, the time, the energy and the skills of a PMO because they're just so big. It's really difficult for someone to do that on top of their day job. So I think it's right to try and split that up and to try and embed innovation as just a core function, a core way in which the service does business. So I'm happy with the recommendation to move the remaining 8 into BAU, and I'll really look forward, whilst commissioners are still here, to receive further updates and progress in the usual governance arrangements. But I just want to say a massive thank you. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of stress, a lot of energy has gone into getting this far. But I think it's a testament to the maturing of the organisation that we can, I feel, as commissioners, we can confidently make that step now.
Yes.
Echo that. It's good to see. I mean, there were a few false starts, and it took a little while to get the organisation turning forward in this way. So, any further comments, Liam? And then
yeah, just a quick one to give commissioners assurance. You talked about strategy development there, and what may be fallen down in the past is how that links to the revenue budget and the medium-term financial plan. As we're developing it this year, then that's fully aligned and much more refined. That's going to come through in the next few months as well.
Makes us sleep at night.
So I really welcome some of the positive comments from commissioners, but I do caution, let's not get carried away. We need to make sure that we generate enough time to drag people away from the daily grind to actually sit back and look at the long-term strategy, look at making sure that you are sequencing things, looking at program management, which I didn't see when I first arrived in the organisation. Now, just this week, getting people in a room and getting them to think about, well, what are your priorities? Even getting that to do, we're still not there, and we've still got a journey to go on. I'm really grateful to all the staff in the room who took part in that, but we've got more work to do on this to make sure that people do take that little step back and think about where am I going next within my department? How am I strategizing within my department or my directorate? I think this was an organisation that pretty much ran within its financial year, possibly 2 financial years, and that was about it, really, and not really thinking about some longer term things. And this is where we need to take it.
Okay, great. In terms of the report, Commissioners now, does anyone disagree with recommendations 2, 1, 2, 2 and 2, 3 and rules 1, 1, 3?
Approved.
Great, thank you. Moving then to item 7.2, the setting of statutory strategic performance indicator projections.
And Chair, this is a report you've had previously, so you asked for it to come back, and there's been, I think, a lot of work looking at this, so Wayne, Francis, present this report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be presenting this report. A lot of the work has gone on since, a lot of the ACF4 service delivery, so there'll be some interjections there from yourself. As mentioned, within the action log and just now as well, this report has been presented previously, has been amended based on feedback and a lot of the work that's happened since. I won't go over all ground, but there is a statutory requirement to report on 7 strategic performance indicators annually, and it should be present in our annual reports. So to provide context to performance reports and discussions, the service has developed a method of devising projections, and they'll inform what the service expects its incident demand profile to look like in the forthcoming year. And it is a 2-step process to come up with this. So the first one is a review of past incident trends. Appendix 2 will give you an insight into where they come from, and it's how we look at providing adequate weight to previous years and understanding that obviously it's good to look back 5-6 years, but also more current years give you a more accurate projection of the current state of affairs. So that'll be in Appendix 2. And then the second part then is in collaboration with the ACF4 service delivery. We look at what the mathematics tell you, and then we obviously look at planned intervention strategies, the professional judgment, and everything that the ACF4 service delivery will run within their directive to try and influence that total. And then we do come up with seven projections. There have been important amendments since the last conversation. So the first one is, I think the previous one, the statistics team and the ACF4 service delivery hadn't been able to have that meeting. You'll notice that the projections in this report have significantly changed. Like I said, that is an acknowledgement that the mathematical projections only take you so far. Again, there have been some spate-in incidents that have driven the mathematical side to be higher. Obviously, you'll notice again the professional judgment, the insight, and known intervention strategies woven in have been able to allow us to significantly amend those projections. A lot of them are lower than the mathematical suggest, which was great news. In the report itself, in Appendix 1, there was an element of duplication in there with 2 totals, and that was removed now that the meeting has occurred. And the other one was in the when it talks about direction of travel, we now look at the previous year's actual versus where we've projected as more of a show of intent. Are we looking to take the number will be lower than the actual last year or the same? And I mentioned as well, it's worth noting that the service again has developed a wider suite of strategic key performance indicators. But again, similar context we hope will be added to them when we do have the outcomes of the community risk management plan and a bit more intelligence. But for now, I think hopefully the report speaks for itself. I think any questions around the totals you see in there as well, we'll probably get from ACF4 service delivery. But hopefully at that point you can happy to take questions.
I know I've always struggled with these. Ever since we started, I've struggled with these. So that's a bit, and as I'm going, I'm going to vent. I really struggle to see the value sometimes. But I think the work's being done, Wayne, is really, really clear, and that's really positive. How are we going to use them? Because I think if I was looking at an old world, just because the line keeps going up or the line keeps going down isn't necessarily good. You know, it's that, isn't it, of what is our aspiration of an organisation, and these are the right metrics to look at, and how do we then define what difference we've actually made as a single entity, or as a partnership compared to other different metrics. When I look at these 7, for the vast majority of them, I really struggle to say to Matt, right, what your team's done that's made a difference to that bottom line, and that I struggle with desperately when we're going to report this compared to the other metrics to, well, government really. So I think the work that's been done, Wayne, Matt, I think for me is absolutely fine. It's good to see it, but I still struggle to see what the bloody hell is going to make a difference at the end of it.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, if you don't mind me jumping in, is to give that initial context of is it roughly where we thought, or is it roughly where we thought it was? Because I think a number in isolation doesn't really give you any context. And I think, like you said, I think that the assurances I can give in this meeting is obviously there are enormous suites of local key performance indicators that sit underneath these. Again, as they are the high level statutory report, it's just to give are we where we thought we were and why, and if not, what action are we taking? But yeah, the assurances I can give is these are only internally, these are a start for 10, but the conversation goes up in terms of data with Matt and his teams, gets a lot deeper in terms of, again, what they're doing out there, the intervention work, and a lot more intricacy around what types of incidents are moving in the wrong way and why. But again, these are very, very high level, and they are just an element of context. I think just is this where we thought we would be, and if not, what are we doing about it? It's just a start of the conversation.
You underline a brilliant point, Carl, I think, which is these are pretty basic, aren't they? They're basic figures, and it's Wayne's point about this being a statutory reporting mechanism. There is a question to be asked with the Welsh Government. Of course, we have just had a change in Welsh Government, which I think is really important, because now with a new change in what's going on, I think lots of questions can be asked. Add to that the new framework in which we are directed to do a CRMP. Well, we're doing the CRMP, and the meeting that we had the other day about the CRMP, we are delving into some statistical work there, which is really fascinating. And when we come to the point that we brief you on up on that, I think you'll be quite surprised at the stuff that we're looking at now. So we're on a journey here to ask more questions, and then out of those questions comes the so what. And that's part of this whole CRMP process. It's part of the make sure we've got decent KPIs. So I sort of look at this as this is our reporting requirement. There's a question to be asked about that, which I'll do. And in fact, we've got a meeting with Dan Stevens, which is about the inspection mechanism. And I think that's a very valid question, and that's what we're asking today. Then there's the CRMP, and also what about the CRMP? You know, we're the first Welsh service to have done a CRMP. Then there's the KPI work that has been introduced that Wayne's team are doing. So there's a lot of movement in this area, and the big thing is the so what, and then what comes after the so what.
Paige, thank you. And directly on that, as you mentioned, fire advisor's name, the question I was going to put in the context of this, with those changes in government, with those changes in governance, would you be recommending that we look at changes in inspection? Because, you know, this is, and we've always said it, haven't we, since day one, this is a very basic analysis in terms of the holistic view of what the fire service does. But unless someone is reviewing and looking externally at what we do, then we don't know how we're going to improve and get better. So if this is going to be expanded, if the CRMP is going to work in the way it should, then surely what follows is a wider inspection regime. And, you know, I for one, would be recommending that you have that in your discussion with Dan Stevens and with the new minister, because, you know, we had to bring in HMCI, yeah, well, whatever, you know they are. And that was extremely useful. So we could find that baseline. But, you know, I would offer that the paucity of the inspection meant that we weren't able to identify previously in the service what needed to be improved. Because unless you check, you know, I speak to someone who comes from an education background where external inspection was rigorous. Mm-hmm. And that really, you know, is how you improve. If someone externally comes in and says, well, this isn't meeting the needs and what's happening elsewhere. So, you know, again, I'd recommend you have that conversation with Mr. Stevens, if that's all right.
Thank you.
Kirsty?
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think it was, I asked for the speaker to come back because I just felt it was incomplete at the last stage. So I just want to say a massive thank you, because I think the paper is now complete, and so I'm grateful for the additional work that's gone into it. Like Carl, I think sometimes we get, I certainly get a bit confused. Well, what is the purpose of these mechanisms? because as the paper quite rightly says in paragraph 3.1, these are not targets, but I guess what it is intelligence potentially that helps us plan what the service response needs to look like, and potentially gives us some early warning signals if we are way off where we thought that we were. I think, Chief, if you're going to have those conversations with the new government, I think it's really clear, if it's not this, then what is it? I would hate for us to be going into a meeting saying that this is inadequate without being absolutely clear what we feel would actually be useful in its replacement. So I just think before those conversations, it might be worthwhile just considering, if it's not this, then what is it that we would be asking for? I think that approach usually lands better with government than just saying, well, what we've got at the moment is not good. So just that's what I would just urge, really, just being very clear about what the ask would be if we feel that this is not adequate.
Yeah, agreed. I think you're absolutely right, and I think we expected more clarity in the framework, didn't we, about future reporting?
Yeah.
And I think it's left that door open to clarify with Welsh Government what useful data looks like, what it's going to be used for, how it's going to be reported, and so on.
I think the bit that makes me uncomfortable, because I just feel it's unfair to the service. We touched on this earlier, didn't we, about road traffic collisions?
Yes.
These are quoted as strategic performance indicators, which gives the impression to a lay member, when these are published, that we are doing worse or better, but how much of that is in our actual control and gift? So I think that part of the problem is in what they're called by the Welsh Government. I think they're useful, but calling them performance indicators is perhaps where the problem lies.
Beyond that, what we do then is utilise them exactly as you said, Commissioner, to target our activities, but also to ensure that our current activity models or prevention and interventions are actually making a difference. And we know some of our activity is weather driven as well, and is beyond our control, such as wildfires, but however it's targeted into that. But certainly what happens behind this as well is a further drill down into number of RTCs we went to, how many people were trapped, how many interventions did we need, how many we've gone to where we've done nothing. So we're delving right down in below that, where we're doing that with Wayne's team, which is really beneficial.
So I think, as I said, what these are, not potential performance indicators, but they're tools for planning. To be able to align our service in the right place. So I think perhaps it's not the content that is the problem, but it is how it's described might be the issue.
So I think historically these have been compliance with Welsh Government. These are indicators you make sure you just report back. Then they've also been used for comparison with the other two brigades. So there's something to take back to the Minister to say this is how well they're doing, how they're doing. I think the point about some of these indicators as well is, as we talked about the RTC ones, is how much control you've got over these indicators. So the RTC one is a partnership approach because you don't control the main levers for doing it. Plus, in certain roads, if you look at the type of incidents you're getting on the M4 during certain periods, that'll be tidal. These will be people that don't live in the area whom you can't influence. There'll be people that come in for the bank holiday weekend and then go out the bank holiday. So trying to educate them, which is the lever that you've got, is difficult. One would hope, though, that in where they live, the local brigade is doing that education as well. So trying to understand the granularity of what's being asked here before you can report back on it. Otherwise, it's like you said, these are just projections, and there's where the thing is that they're not targets. Like, we are going to drive down this particular thing by 8% by end of financial report 4.
The road traffic collision work that's being done with CRMP is fascinating because this is generic, it's the whole of our area. When you actually start looking at the work that's been going on there, we are getting down to which junctions are the most dangerous. Therefore, what are we doing about that to improve an outcome? And one of the areas that we've looked at, one of our service areas, there's definitely a bit of a black spot there. What are we doing about that is going to feed into the fire cover review and it's going to feed into the overall CRMP work? Now, I don't want to go into what that is right now because we're at early stages there, but that's revealing some really interesting stuff.
Just a moment, it's one of those things that has to be around the partnership approach. So, for example, fire rescue will understand first and quicker, like the police will, where black spots for RTCs are during bad weather, because you'll be attending those incidents.
Yeah.
That's the type of information that should go to where the gritters are coming from.
Mm.
So you're working together as a partnership, rather than it's a really bad area. What can we do about it? So if you don't know the levers, who does hold the levers, and how do you influence them? Kirsten?
I think the partnership speaks to the proactivity of the service within the PSB space. And I sit on two PSBs in a different capacity, you know, and it's been really great to see our service fully participating in those PSB meetings. To look at how, together with our other partners around the table, we can impact. So, you know, most recently, both Liam and the Chief were at the Cardiff PSB, joint work between social services and healthcare to look at falls prevention and talking about sharing data. And then, you know, we were able to say, well, if we could be part of that data sharing, we could then target our home fire safety checks to the very people that you're identifying are the most vulnerable people.
Yeah.
And together we could make a massive impact on those individuals. So I think it speaks to, you know, the importance of being proactive in those partnership spaces, which I see the service doing with my other hat on now, and that's very useful.
There's another brilliant example of that. Martin, the PSB that you were invited to, you now chair a meeting.
You chair the PSB?
No.
One of the subgroups, just around the prevention stuff, with respect to climate impact. But there's some really good opportunities there from a fire service to put forward our resource and capability to support work that actually they were quite struggling with. So I'll attend the next meeting and
He didn't go and he got volunteered in his absence.
I think what's to be aware of as a service is just to keep an eye on, you know, the partnership space in Wales is notoriously complex. With PSBs, RPBs, lots and lots of regional groups. I just wonder, just strategically, Chief, to keep an eye on whether a new government might want to look at the architecture of partnership, but continue to advocate for us being in the right partnerships, because we can make a difference. And working with our colleagues will make a difference to us.
Yes.
So I think strategically something to keep an eye on as we go forward.
Just last night, we had the independent advisory group, and this was a major subject of conversation, wasn't it? It was data sharing, partnerships, and wouldn't it be great if we could get to the point that we actually do really share? One of our members comes from overseas and says that there is an incredible thing that goes on in Britain where lots and lots of meetings and you sit around and talk, but you don't actually crack on and do things. And I thought that was a really interesting comment, because we do as a nation, and there are some real threats and challenges that we've got. We need to move out, and I think there really is something about escalate, because in that room it's again step back, stop and think and listen, and think about the more strategic level that we should be operating in. Because it's very easy, again, to sit there doing the day job and just working within the groups that you've got going. Are there opportunities, and I think you just summed it up really well, Commissioner, where should there be something going on potentially nationally about data sharing in Wales? Question.
Well, data sharing. So I think what's really interesting about data sharing, isn't it, is that we hide behind I'm glad Christine's not in the room, GDPR and GDPR regs. I think the question that all public services need to ask themselves is, what is the risk of not sharing the data? So we spend a lot of time focusing on what are the risks of sharing data, and do not spend enough time thinking about what are the risks of not sharing data. And what's really interesting is that new EU legislation is actually making it a requirement on public sector organisations to share data more widely. There would be nothing to stop a UK government following the data standards and the approach that is being taken. The challenge in Wales is that we're responsible for data protection legislation, but I still think that it would be useful for this service to be playing a leading part in challenging, as I say, not the risks of sharing data, but the risks of not sharing data, and the public's expectation around how their data could be used, should be used to support them.
I completely agree. I'll set up a meeting for Christian with you later.
The GDP.
We've set that as an objective as well for Area Manager Mark Havel to work out how we can utilise the PSBs to get more data, because what we know is a lot of individuals that have injuries or sadly fatalities from fires are known to other agencies. So we need to overcome this barrier for better outcome, and that's the key thing for us.
And what we would know is that those individuals are probably being red flagged on the social services system, on the health system.
Education.
But you know, we need to share that data across all the agencies so that then we can all proactively target those individuals to meet their holistic needs.
Okay.
It's a whole other meeting on data sharing.
Talks about for information assurance, there are recommendations.
Yeah.
So we'll need to deal with this later on outside of it. But as it asks for has recommendations, we just need to approve 2.1, 2.2,
Yes.
3.
Agreed.
I think the work's being done by the teams is really, really good. Very, very positive.
Okay, okay. There were no, I wasn't notified of any items that are urgent. So
And you will notice, Chair, that there's no forward work plan on here. That's deliberate because it's still impacted by ongoing discussions with the Welsh Government. The next meeting in the diary is the 3rd of July, which is your AGM. So there are standard agenda items you expect to see on your AGM agenda anyway, but I will share that draft agenda with you quite soon because we're already in the planning process for that. But then I'm hoping to have a bit more clarity from Welsh Government and start to be able to populate these forward work plans to different committees.
Right, okay. So in terms of the papers that we've got the minutes that were from the executive. Do we need to approve those minutes?
In the exempt session. Yeah, so you read out that bit of script and go into exempt and return. Okay, so the following minutes are exempt information under Schedule 12A of the Government Act 72 as it contains information in relation to business affairs of any particular person. Paragraph 3, and it contains information collected in relation to crime. Public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs public interest in disclosing the information. So now we go into. Just check the commissioners agree.
Agreed.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Steve.
Steve, sorry.
Thank you, guys. I was looking at my button. Thank